now the feeds. Excuse me.
I'm still heating water for tea.
Yeah. True. Okay, Rupert has greeted as well, so we have to greet. So.
Yes, we shall see.
Appearing again, and there you go. Hey, Urim, you have joined us. And Andre has joined us in YouTube. Hello. Andre asks if I got a haircut. Well, we both cut our hair.
Not recently.
A few days back.
No, more than a week now.
Oh, yeah, that's true. So it's just styled a bit different, I guess. But yes, while we're in warm-up, please share it around. Share it with your friends. Share it with your family. Share it with your ex. No, don't share it with your ex.
Probably not a good idea.
Because we will judge you if you share it with your ex.
I'm just gonna get tea, guys.
So yeah, we already have a peek on what today's topic is about. Cuddle with some sheep while waiting. I, on the other hand, have been a naughty boy.
Oh, sorry. Do you want porridge fruits or do you want ginger? What did you get? Oh no. Takinoko.
I'll go with ginger. Ginger sounds good today. The restless mind needs a new game, I guess, on digital. But yeah, we will be officially starting in a bit more time, probably a minute or two. Hair's a bit more pulled back today. Yeah. Oh my, what happened to my laptop? I shut it off.
You turned it off entirely.
I think so.
Were you planning to switch?
No, I must have pressed something by mistake.
Or maybe just slept.
Yeah, I think I pressed sleep by mistake. Jay has joined us. Hey, Jay. Andre, of course. Baduy, that's where art thou. Oh my gosh. I still cringe each time I hear that term. I don't think I'll ever be used to that term, to be honest. So yeah. Jay, chilling with you guys for a bit before client appointment. That's a healthy way to do it. Admittedly, it's always still a challenge when you realize that some friends are in different time zones. So you have those brief snatches of conversation before one heads to work and the other one heads to bed.
Yeah. Over on Facebook and Twitter, I am asking people for suggestions for Friday topics. And I guess thematically, everybody's asking for horror stuff, which I get. I was expecting more, I don't know, queer, drinky topics because I was stressing alcohol and such. But we'll see. We'll see.
Well, horror stories is normally usapang laseng when, you know.
Is it? Okay, it's not my culture.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a scary story person. I do not have stories of this nature.
Hey, David. Yes, it's Caverna.
And hello, Pico.
Oh, yeah, Pico there.
And so I don't know yet. And then, of course, some people are suggesting work horror stories. It's tricky when you're the boss. I am probably the subject of horror stories. I don't know.
It would not be wise.
It would not be wise when you are running a business to complain about clients.
It will also not be professional to do so.
Of course. So yeah, not maybe that angle is not great for a stream. So we'll continue to explore.
David says, "Yeah, Toby gets me with the horror stories plus drink, and that is why we should abduct certain people here for those nights." But yeah,
Toby is stressing that I should watch some horror movies or shows this month, and
I'm
guess
ready with bandages for my arms.
I already okay. No, wait, no, he's not, because I first said, "Is your arm ready?" And then he said, "No. Why should the arm be ready? You don't need the arm." And for context, it's because when he made me watch The Descent and a few other horror movies,
It was nail-bitingly scary.
I don't do well with horror, guys. I really don't.
We'll start small. We'll start with simple horror like Jaws and
I
Nightmare
can
on Elm Street.
handle Jaws.
Exactly, and then as you get used to it, you know, you do my tactic, which is when it starts getting really scary, you remind yourself, "Oh, that's cool special effects."
No, what my dad? I stand further away.
Rocky hides past the door and has his hands blocking part of the view.
I don't like getting surprised. And then worse, I don't like it when there's the setup of anticipation. So
The
you are
tension.
expecting it.
You know something's gonna happen.
Yeah. So.
Oh yes, Andre, the episode of Unsolved Mysteries about the tsunami was quite heavy. It wasn't scary for me, but it was heavy.
Yeah. I didn't find it scary per se, but I did find it like, oh, and it makes sense because Japan. That's Lanchi. It hadn't synced over here. Hello, Lanchi. How rare.
Yeah,
of you to
and then
join.
Urim seems to be alone on Facebook.
But
so-
don't worry, Urim, we're with you. Okay.
So yeah, let's get started as we talk about a board game. This is Toby.
And this is Rocky.
And if it's your first time here, welcome to Baduy Pride, a little space on the a little space on the internet where we talk about anything we want.
This is completely unscripted and not entirely accurate, but at least it's honest. Join us. We talk about everything and anything, random,
And
live.
if it's not your first time here, welcome back. It's another 30 minutes or 30 plus minutes where we talk about a topic, and this topic was also a suggestion.
Okay, specifically, the original suggestion was Caverna and sheep. And I guess that stems from our discussion of lowlands the other week.
Mhm.
So we're talking about Caverna. Yes, sheep are inside the box. And once again, Toby's going to have to explain how this game came into our life because it's one of those things.
So notice Caverna is a huge box. And this is in this position for scale purposes. It's bigger than my head. It's wider than my head.
My God.
But yes, Caverna is the
I like to call it the evolved form of Agricola, only
Mhm.
because it came after, and clearly there were concepts that were shared between the two.
so Caverna is a worker placement game by UV. I keep saying it wrong. UV Rosenberg, who was originally known for card games. He did Bonanza. He did a bunch of
Isn't
card
that
games.
strange that he made banana?
And from creating what seems to be smaller, I guess you could say, lighter card games, he suddenly dives into this game which mixes strategy with resources, with tile placement. You have modifying turn orders, and you have lots and lots and lots of pieces and resources to fiddle with in this game.
To be fair, I feel like this box is designed this way for two reasons. One, the amount of wooden tokens that are in the box. And then two, because originally all the tiles were on sheets.
Mhm.
And so the box was designed to carry the cardboard fully.
So let's talk about what we have inside, because we know that Caverna is about Dwarven cave farmers. As we talked about it in a previous episode, there's
Yeah.
farming and there's digging in the cave, and you'll see more of that in a bit. But first, let's see. We got coins. We got pumpkins or vegetables. to be more precise.
Vegetables. So I guess they're more
We got
stocky.
stone.
Yeah.
We got dogs. We got wood.
That look like dogs.
We got cows. We got boars. We got donkeys. We got wheat. We got food tokens. We got rubies and ore. And yes, we combine them so it's simpler. And look, the box is still filled up. Because we haven't gotten to our favorite sheep. Beyond that, we have a huge bag of wooden tokens, which
For the
represent
different player
the
tokens.
different player tokens, which are their action dwarf tokens. Their
Action dwarves.
their barns, which allow them to have double the number of units on a tile, and of course the first player token. Having removed all that, notice the box is still filled up.
It's all tiles, guys.
Because
Tiles and
that's
player boards.
where the tiles come in. And by tiles, we mean a lot of tiles. A lot of different tiles. And mind you, these are the pretty bag tiles because we still have the less
Sandwich bags.
pretty looking sandwich bags that store tiles with labels.
With Toby drawn labels. I don't know about these pictographs, but that's how he decided.
And
to
notice
label
after all that, we're only halfway through.
I cannot see comments anymore, so I'm trying to recover.
Yeah,
as Toby.
I'll have to bring back my screen in a bit.
Yeah.
We have weapon tokens. We have the turn order cards and the ones that tell you if there is a harvest. We have the point sheet.
This is super not helping people, but yes.
And finally, we have boards and boards and boards and boards and boards. Yeah, that's main game boards.
To be fair, we've crammed the expansion into this box already.
Mhm.
So
The expansion is here, which we are removing for the purposes of illustrating the content. I'll need space there because the boards will pop up. But if we're still talking about the basic set, we've only reached the bottom because now we have the player boards. So, going back to Cave Farmers.
you may want to hold up a player board.
Yes.
Yes, it's upside down. Okay, so to perfectly capture this sentiment that this is a game about dwarven farmers, notice that half the board represents a little wooded area, and then the other half represents the mountain or the inside of a mountain because, you know, we're digging caves. And you can choose to develop one or both sides, but there's sort of a principle that at the end of the game, any unused spaces are penalty points. So it really does encourage you to maximize the board as much as possible. And there are crazy options that let you even build beyond your spaces, and that's fine.
The earlier board we showed you represents the board wherein you lay out the different possible rooms that you can build. They are also called furnishings in the game. Each one is unique. Each one offers a different tactic, and many of them amazingly interact with each other in different ways.
Once you figure it out. So depending on that, because Dwarven makes you think cave, and then Farmer makes you think farm. So either way is possible. So at the end of the day, this is a farming game. Really, it is.
It's all about cultivating the space you're in, finding ways to build engines that will allow you to get more points at the end of the game. But you can never ever neglect one or the other side completely, because other than spaces not being used having penalties, missing certain farm animals also gives you penalties.
And there are many animals. This game, like as Toby showed you, has a dog, a sheep, a donkey, a cow, a boar. Did I miss something? I think that's it. Those are your farm.
Yeah, those are the farm animals. So these are the action boards, and not all of them are used in every game. As you can see in the upper corner, there are markers on how many players. This is 6 to 7, for example. The reverse side might show a different number, but ultimately, when you set up the game, you identify the number of players, and that determines how many boards will be used.
Yeah, so all of the boards that fit your player count will be revealed, and it's not as straight up as 2 players, 3 players, 4. There are some that that mix and match.
Yes.
Depending on number of players, odd number of players, and all these things.
Now, these action slots are different depending on the number of players. So it still offers all these variety in terms of experiencing the game when you choose to play with just two people or when 4, 5 additional players join in, because the game accommodates all the way to 7, which is amazing in this day and age.
Especially for a game like this deep, this admittedly kind of crunchy. It's not normally these games that max out at 4,
Yes.
maybe 5. So to have a game that goes up to 6, 7, it's kind of bonkers.
Mhm.
But hey, that's Caverna.
The game is played in a total of 9 rounds, as you can see here on this board.
It
But-
makes you think it's a quick game. It is not.
Sorry, 12 rounds. 12 rounds.
Yeah.
Um,
It is deceptively long.
But at the same time, the reason that was an action board in that sense where the cards shuffle which actions are available at what time when you're playing.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in this game. There are all these. There's boards to hold the tiles that represent the rooms or
Mhm.
furnishings. There's a board to handle the cards, which represent the variable actions, so that no two games are the same. And yeah, okay. I mean, we need these placeholders, and you have your player boards, which hold all your
Mhm.
stuff.
In standard, I guess, in standard sheep existing game fashion, the game does allow your sheep to procreate and create more sheep, as well as the other animals.
All farm animals except dogs. I guess because they're neutered.
But at the same time, if ever you have babies and you don't have the space to keep them, they run away.
No, yeah, they're born safely and then leave the farm and maybe join another dwarven farm.
The game also challenges you to pay attention to how many how many dwarves you have. The dwarves themselves are your worker tokens each turn, and there are ways to create more dwarves, make babies.
Wish for family. Wish for
Family, yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that means you need to generate or make sure you produce enough food, because not being able to feed your people is painful in terms of how many
Very
points
painful
at
penalties.
the end of the game.
But even before you can think about having a baby, your baby has to have a room.
yes,
He has to have a place to stay. And that's at the very least is a dwelling.
Mhm.
Although there are special dwellings that like let them sleep with animals in
Mhm.
their room.
The
or
cuddle
things like
room,
that.
for example, is a dwelling that allows you to have sheep staying there as well.
It's not a dwelling.
Oh yeah, it's not a
You
dwelling.
can't put a
But it
dwarf,
allows you-
but it allows you to
yeah.
hold sheep because yay, let's cuddle
Yeah,
with
and then
sheep.
there's the mixed dwelling that allows.
That's
you.
what allows you to have farm animals in
Mm.
your room. I don't know why.
There's the breakfast room that allows you to have cows inside of it. And then, of course, if you have mines, the donkeys can stay in the mine.
That doesn't need a room. That's just a thing. I love donkeys in a mine.
Now, a large part of the game is balancing out what resources or what development you plan each turn. Considering you start the game with only 2 dwarves, that basically means you have 2 actions per turn. And in a 12-round game, by turn 3, you've done 6 actions.
Really, I think it all boils down to your rooms. And like
Mhm.
I think in every game of Caverna, this is slightly an overview and slightly a tip, but generally you want to figure out what your approach is going to be. What furnishing are you going to aim for, because it's going to define what you do. I mean, like if you want a cuddle room, then I guess you're going to go for sheep. And you're going to want to find a way to maximize what your sheep do and look if there's other rooms that benefit from having many sheep. Or if you want to grow a lot of wheat, then you're probably going to want like to brew beer. And because that's a more optimal way of generating resources, as long as you can keep up your production. So you're going a very
Mhm.
farm focused route. And that's just like the joy of Caverna. Because all of the rooms are unique, you can design a strategy around any of them.
Or you could grab the rooms others plan to use to make sure their strategies are forced to adjust.
That's my job.
Quick comments check. We have Gab, my office mate from before, who says Caverna. Yes, it's an awesome game. Mitch says hello, of course. Pico asks, the house is also a cave.
Well, all dwarves live in caves,
Mhm,
duh.
because-
I mean, everybody knows this about dwarves.
Pico also adds, parang treasure box yung board game na yan. Yes, because can you imagine the first time we bought this? We were like, oh my god, look at this. There's so much stuff in it.
And it
then-
was so heavy. And we made the mistake of buying this in Singapore. So this was part of our luggage. And like, Toby, what did we buy? It's so heavy.
And I'm like, no, trust me, this is going to be good.
Yeah, we tried playing it while we were in Singapore, and it was good. And I was just paranoid that we were going to lose an animal before getting home.
Yes. The game is also incredible in this factor. It has rules for solitaire play.
Mm.
And it's not often you'll find a big game that has solitaire play rules.
Actually, we should take a moment to talk about the manual. I think because there are two booklets, right?
Yes.
There's the manual that gives you an overview of the game, and then there's like
The appendix.
the appendix or like a glossary, which is just a reference sheet of all the rooms and things like that.
So here's the manual.
Okay, what we like about the manual is this one is that Juve, can you see the little cartoon man? So he talks to the player as you go over the manual, so to speak, with a little asides and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But they're very helpful tips and information. If anything, the manual is intimidatingly long, but it's because it's super detailed.
And
I mean, super examples upon examples upon examples.
Yes. He breaks down every concept after explaining that, you do this in the game. Then he explains why. He explains how it's useful. He explains other strategies you will have.
Commercial break. Mitch is asking, is this the game where the sheep is malformed? No, that's Lowlands. You missed the episode.
The appendix, on the other hand, is your guide.
It's all no nonsense, guys. It's all stuff.
So it's your guide to every action space, to every resource, and to every room that exists in the game.
So it's the kind of thing that you can have the guy who taught the rules of the game holding the first manual, while maybe players between turns might need to look at the reference sheet to double check stuff. So it's helpful in that regard. And if you've ever played these big games, then this is just a very thoughtful approach to it, and it makes it a lot easier to teach. Although we're already at a point where Toby just teaches it from memory, but it's also because we love this game.
Yeah, admittedly, the first and I think the only major rule we got wrong when we were playing this
was animal reproduction.
was the breeding rules. We used to believe that every pair of animals will have children.
Doesn't that make sense?
And in our first few sessions,
so many cows.
she kept running out of animals.
Yes.
And we were like, we must be doing something wrong. We were.
And that lasted a while. I think we thought a good number of gaming groups about it, that this is Caverna, this is how we play. And then, we're just dealing with these armies of cows and like, holy crap.
And then later on, when we found out that the rule was the moment you have a pair of animals of the same type, then they will breed one new animal. So it doesn't matter if you have 8 or 16 or just 2, you will get one new animal.
And so it's like I don't know, they let one couple do it and they're all watching.
And all the others are judging that. This is so Midsummer.
Didn't watch that either.
Now, so Caverna is intimidating. It's huge, but it is like we said with
Lowlands.
In Lowlands, wherein it's one of those games wherein as you play, it starts to click in. It starts to make sense. And in many ways, what makes this game amazing is the fact that you can make mistakes, but you don't necessarily feel like you ruined your game already.
And because you don't, it's one of those Euro games where you don't really know who's winning until the very end. So sometimes just plodding along and making sure, staying out of starvation is an achievement in itself. And that alone, I feel like in your first games, as long as you cover your board and you don't starve, that's a good game. That's already like a really good game. And it's just a matter of what animals you want to have.
So Mitch has a nice question, but yes, Mitch, we'll tackle it in a bit, the difference with this and Agricola. Because before we get to that, we shall close the main game to talk about the fact that the game has an awesome expansion known as the Forgotten Folk.
Look, there's pictures, there's people. They add individual factions with individual powers.
So the Forgotten Folk is basically an expansion that answers the question, Why do we have to play dwarves? And the answer is you don't have to.
So now you can be troll farmers, mountain dwarf farmers, pale one farmers, dark elf farmers. Oops, elf farmers. My board popped out. Cave goblin farmers and
Yes.
boring human farmers.
And don't forget my favorite, the silicoid.
Silicoid farmers. They're not. They're a silicon-based life form. They're like the Horta in Star Trek.
So each of these different folks basically replaces the term dwarf in the main game.
Yep, it
So-
literally says that in the rulebook.
So whenever you now have anything that affects dwarves, they can affect any of these folks. However, it's not just a matter of cosmetic substitution. Each of these races, each of these forgotten folk concepts and rules have their own new tricks, have their own abilities, have
Sometimes
their own
new
advantages
resources.
and disadvantages. And yes, as Rocky mentioned, the game introduces 2 new resources.
And alternate
in the game.
rooms.
We have now the mushrooms, and we have the ruby fruits.
Yeah.
The gemberries. I'm sorry, the gemberries.
Gemberries.
The gemberries are like normal vegetables. They can be grown to some extent, but then they can be spent like rubies, which makes them quite powerful if you think about it. It's tricky though because there is no way to get gemberries except for the ones you start with at the start of the game.
And that's only 2 factions that have them.
And if you're not careful, you might lock yourself out from being able to use them because you grew them wrong and spent them.
I'm amused that because I played human and the humans are claustrophobic, so they also have flaws and like
Mhm.
they're claustrophobic. So when they build in a cave, they only build one square at a time. Unlike other people, they can have 2
The
tiles.
double tiles.
Yeah, so it's very hard. But they don't like to stay inside.
Mhm. Oh, that's what we didn't really tackle. How the tiles are on the board and how they nicely start stacking when you create things. But it's hard to do it.
It's hard to do it in a demo,
Yeah.
but basically, I mean, really, your developments will come up with a lot of overlapping tiles. For
Mhm.
example, your standard like drift mining tile will allow you to build an actual ore mine or a gem,
on top
a
of
ruby
it.
mine on top,
Yeah.
which
Or-
actually represents you going deeper.
Or you might have 2 tiles that, let's say, are both fields, but then now that they're connected, you can build on top of it, intersecting
You can put a fence.
a fenced area, which allows you to keep animals. What else? The new Forgotten Folk as well offer, as mentioned, new rooms, which tend to be modified versions of certain rooms.
They
when
replace existing
Yes,
rooms.
when they're in play.
That's a bit of a pain. So suddenly you're gonna have to see what that one new room is, and can you use it even if it's not your faction. Thankfully, the board does give you a handy guide on the back with what room it replaces. So that's very nice.
So yeah, Forgotten Folk is one of the expansions we have. It's not the only expansion that this game has.
Yeah, there's like other Forgotten Folk factions that were released as promo cards, which is on the list of things that Toby will obsessively try to find
Yes.
one day.
There are halflings.
GM is here. He's saying sheep because he suggested today's topic.
There are, for example, halflings, which are inspired by the Tolkien halflings, if not the Kender from Dragonlance. There are a bunch of other races that are visible or available in Board Game Geek. Many of them have been released as print and play. But then there are also unique rooms.
Yeah.
There's Christmas rooms. There's, I think, Gen Con inspired rooms and the like. And it's just frustrating because you want to find them all, but even
We
if
have
you
not
print
seen
it,
them.
you won't have them in the thickness that will make it feel satisfactory.
It's a lot of effort to like print and play stuff to the level of detail that the existing game has.
Yes.
That's kind of hard to love. Mitch was so we should probably try to address Mitch's question, which is
Mhm.
first, how does it differ from Agricola?
So Agricola has a similar feel in the sense that you do have a board, that's the action board that's shared across players.
You are farming.
You are farming, you are building your farm, so you also have player boards that you develop fences around to build the rooms in. You also have animals. You also have different resources. In Agricola, I believe it's stone, brick, wheat. No, not wheat. I'm sorry, reeds and wood. But then what Agricola adds that Caverna doesn't have. There's a lot of these role cards. I think they were called occupation or job cards. Like if you were, for example, a baker, then you could spend the wheat to create bread, which allows you to have more efficient food. But then you can have a second card that also makes you. I think one of the examples was a banker, wherein you start with a certain amount of money, or the stone builder, which allows you to build stone structures faster. So you're sort of multi-classing as you play the game. And in Caverna, you don't really have that.
Maybe the Forgotten Folk kind of address that
Mhm.
feel, but it's not really part of the core Caverna experience. And I
Yeah.
think the differentiation just really this whole whether you develop the cave or you develop
Mhm.
the farm, the woods, is really what like defines the Caverna experience.
I think Agricola shares more parallels in the sense of the job cards with those cards in Feast for Odin,
Feast for Odin. Feast for
wherein you
Odin.
had you're the fisherman. and
yeah,
then you're
yes,
the
yes,
spear
yes.
guy, and it sort of gives you additional powers if you use them properly.
Feast for Odin is another Uwe Rosenberg game.
Yeah.
It's the one that came after this one with an even bigger box. But to be fair, I recognize that one for coming with storage trees,
Yes.
whereas Caverna does not. And Mitch was also asking, how do you take care of Caverna items? We are not the best example of how to take care of it.
That's why we use sandwich bags.
For the longest time, Toby would store this Caverna style, which is Caverna Carcassonne style, which is we kept the main boards that the tiles came in, and we would return them to make sure we had the
Every
right
single one.
count. Instead, now Toby has these bags, but wait, I want to show people
Yeah, that's there.
your fabulous
Here, here,
legend.
here.
So look, he drew the tile and how many there are. That's Toby's method for keeping it. I'm sure I know there are like I'm sure custom inserts or
Mhm.
that you can use to replace what's here, but sheer amount of material is hard. Caverna is a game that is best in this position. Do not have it standing up in your shelf.
Yes.
I do not recommend that because the pieces will force their way out and open the box.
Yes. I know that a large part of, well, at least my apprehension before with inserts was that there were all these horror stories of having purchased an insert and then an expansion comes out and, okay, my insert is now useless. But I think many modern day inserts now try to take into account expansion space. And other games like, let's say, Smash Up or Legendary sort of prepare their boxes with gaps ready.
No,
for
Smash Up is a lie because the big geeky box is no longer big enough to hold all of Smash Up. And instead, their solution was to create the bigger, geekier box. I am not buying another custom box for Smash Up. And it comes with the same freaking bonus geek faction. So, not great. Not great. So, no, not all games think of it.
Mhm.
And then all the Caverna inserts, I think, so far are like third-party developed. There's like no official
Mhm.
insert. We're not-
I worry if they'll ever come out with like Ultimate Caverna Collection or something because I think we'll end up buying it.
It depends on if it has all the promo factions. I guess that's the only reason why we get it. Oh, and then of course we're generous in the silica moisture absorbing thing
Silicoids!
because between the cardboard of the boards and the wooden tokens, you have a lot of things that can absorb moisture. So yeah, that's our tips for storing and keeping Caverna safe.
See,
And hence Toby keeps hugging the box whenever he holds it on. You see,
I noticed it.
it's opening already. So yeah, do not stand Caverna. Unless it's in the store shelf and the box is unopened.
What else? What else can we say about Caverna?
Caverna is a long game. Especially if you get to like 5-6 player range.
Yes.
It does get long. Even though you all start with 2 dwarves, thus 2 actions per turn. There's something around turns 6 and 7 when Wish for Family changes that the game just decelerates
Yes.
into a much longer game. It just takes one player getting his 3rd dwarf and it changes everything. And then everybody's going to be rushing to get another dwarf out.
Especially when you consider that the game has one other factor that we haven't really talked about: expeditions. Your dwarves can actually be armed with weapons. And when they have weapons, there are certain spaces that allow them not just to get whatever resources that space offers, but actually also go on expeditions. And expeditions are this two-sided card list of things that you can get
Depending on the level of your
on the
weapon.
level of your weapon. Because yes, the game for some reason also found it awesome to have experience when it comes to your expeditions. Your dwarf with a level 5 weapon goes on an expedition and they can come back with a level 6 or even a level 7 weapon depending on how you play it.
Do not underestimate expeditions. Players who absolutely do not ever expedition
Rarely win.
rarely win.
Yes.
Sorry, it's just the way it is because you can do multiple actions through expeditions and the bonuses just keep rolling.
Yes.
And if you don't, yeah.
But at the same time, if everyone else is doing expeditions and you chose not to, you realize you'll have so much leeway because so everyone else is attacking the same spots.
That is true, though. And even imitation spots will be used to try to do the same expeditions. Well, maybe, I don't know. Are you just farming to your heart's delight? Did you do the overhang tiles and build a bigger farm and just farm?
So let's go through a series of quick tips.
Okay.
My first tip is pay attention to your food. It is always better to take an action that earns you food tokens you will give up in a harvest round than it is to sacrifice animals or unplanted food resources that could bear fruit if you chose to use them instead.
Yeah, and those penalty tokens are never worth it. Because some people think that I can recover. I feel like when it's a slippery slope, man. It just don't. Those things are very painful. My tip really is don't get too pressured by Dwarf 3.
Yes.
I mean, we've seen games where players can survive with 2 dwarves all the way to the
and
end
we've seen people win
with 2 dwarves. You don't need to rush because remember, the whole production of creating another dwarf is figuring out a dwelling, which is taking up a furnishing slot in your cave, and then figuring out food for every turn thereafter. Even when they're babies, you need to feed them. So if you think it's a big burden.
And if you think about it, that was basically 4 steps to get that new person. You create your cavern. From that cavern, you build the furnishing. From that furnishing,
you wish for babies.
You take the action to create the baby. And it's only finally then that the baby comes back fully adult and can finally act. So
and you have to feed him on the turn that he was a baby.
So it's a huge investment, but at the same time, if you reach the 6th child, it's awesome.
Only one player can have 6 dwarves, and that 6th dwarf is a cardboard token, no longer a piece of wood. But yeah, it's a prize in itself, and there are bonuses for that.
What else? Pay attention to the rooms. Maybe you did not go on expeditions. Then make sure you keep an eye on that room that allows you to get points for not having any weapons.
The peaceful thing, whatever.
Likewise, if you've been in a expedition war for so long against other players, maybe it's a good time to snag that room that allows you to throw away all your weapons and turn it into food, because the other player might have been too preoccupied with stuff and they're not ready for feeding.
Or it's a good time to swoop in and to get the first player token so that you can get that expedition slot.
Yeah.
And that's always devious.
Don't underestimate the power of rubies.
I knew it. You're gonna say it the moment I said first player. You're gonna say rubies.
Yeah, because rubies allow you to fill holes in your board when you're near the end of the game.
Sounds weird.
It allows you to buy instantly things you might need for that moment. You're still missing a cow. You spend this and that cow. You suddenly want to build that room, but no one has created a cavern yet. Spend that token.
Furnish a cavern.
And it's an amazing flexible system that's worth the effort, because in the end, if you don't spend them, it's still 1 point per room.
Yes.
You have to mention your donkey.
That's my strategy. Stay out of it. No, get away from donkey in a mine. Yeah. So map out your food.
Donkey in a mine and feed someone's dog.
Embrace your strategy, guys. I mean, like, again, find the room and run with it and see what rooms work with it. So yes, I have a thing where every donkey in a mine reduces the food requirement for one dwarf by half.
Mhm.
So normally you have to feed them 2 food, then you just have to feed 1 food.
Mhm.
And then if you're really sinister,
There's a room.
there's a room that lets you feed one dwarf with like wood or
Stone.
stone or ore.
So instead of having them feed normally, they're biting the
Ah.
rocks.
That was my other tip. It's that you will tend to accumulate resources throughout the game. You might start having a glut of one resource. Let's say a lot of stone,
A lot of ore.
or a lot of ore. Then look at the rooms that might make value of it, because
Yes.
resources on their own
Are
do not
worth.
do not generate victory points at the end of the
Mhm.
game. So midway, if you are sitting on so much ore, it's either you need to build rooms with it or find the room that gives you points
Yes.
for the ore that you have or the
Yes.
stone that you have. Especially wood. Wood accumulates really
Mhm.
fast.
Pay attention as well that there are some similar rooms that have a difference when it comes to points. Dwellings, for example, there are the basic dwellings which are cheaper to build but are worth, I think, no points at the end of
Oh,
the
the
game.
simple dwellings,
Yeah.
yeah, there's nothing.
But then you have the standard dwellings,
That's
which cost
3.
a bit more, that give you points. And then you have the more fancy dwellings, from the mixed dwelling to the couples dwelling,
Toby always likes either the mixed or the couples.
because they're worth a lot of more points with just a little bit more
He
resources.
just wants to sleep with sheep.
That sounds so wrong.
It is. But hey, am I the one with sheep in my room? No, it'd be you.
Don't underestimate the power of dogs in your fields. Dogs can take care of sheep even if they're not in a fenced-in location.
Remember, it is number of dogs plus
Plus one.
1 sheep. So actually, if you split up a dog to the 1 dog on each field, that's 2 sheep per field. That's 4 sheep.
Which is a lot compared to having
That
all
is
the
a-
effort to build one fenced-in
Yeah,
area.
that's a small fenced-in area.
Mhm.
So yeah, think about it. Dogs are awesome.
And then if it's a game with more than 4 players, do not ignore the imitation spots, because those spots, typically one of them is completely free to imitate something. So try to be the first one to grab that if you can, because you're gonna hate it when you need it and you now have to pay food to use it.
Don't be afraid to pay rubies to change dwarf order. So that because it's always your lowest level weapon dwarf that goes out first. But don't be afraid to spend a ruby to jump the line,
Mhm.
because then you can possibly level up your other dwarves,
On
and
the best expedition spot as well.
yeah, especially that double one. There's that weird one that's like
Go on
one
an adventure.
expedition, and like really, but no, because even though it looks like 2 rewards, remember that at the end of every expedition you
Yeah.
level up.
Mhm.
So you can jump at least 2 levels just by performing that action.
Mhm.
Excuse me. And if you spend those actions to level up all dwarves,
The others are then leveled up by the time.
and that dwarf ends 4 levels higher.
Yes.
So that's amazing math. Yeah, and then that's like it's one of the most basic expedition abilities that is
Mhm.
often forgotten because it doesn't have an icon. But the most basic thing you can do in any expedition is to level up all the weapons of all your dwarves.
Mhm.
And it's a great thing to do with low level dwarves later on. Like, we'll just pull up the team, guys. You
Yeah.
know?
Mitch asks again, do dogs reproduce? No, dogs don't reproduce. But if you give them a dog school, whenever a new dog shows up,
They come back with a stick.
they have wood whenever they come back.
But yeah, you typically in the beginning, the easiest way to get dogs is by furnishing a cavern,
Mhm.
because that action space comes with a dog.
Mhm.
And then you don't have to feed dogs. Dogs are
Yes.
awesome. They just run around the field, wait for sheep.
Yeah.
Good job, dog.
I know I've had games where I ended the game with like 10 dogs. So yeah, Caverna is highly recommended. It is not for first-time players. It is
Yeah.
not for new players. But if you do have a new player who has explored worker placement games or Euro games in the past, this is not that hard to get into. I think the bigger frustration is that person will want to know all the rooms to maximize their moves.
Yes.
And you just have to accept that your first 3 or 4 games in Caverna is getting accustomed to how it works.
it's keeping your dwarves alive.
And
It's
it's-
feeding and furnishing.
And it's realizing the beats of, oh, okay, so I now have this breeding room because I'm not sure if there will be a harvest, or I now know that, it takes this and that, and then, I now have sprouts that I can eat. So it's getting used to these mechanics that the system runs on.
Ooh, my last tip is to please, please, please pay attention to those darn three red icons. So there's the three there's the in the second half of the player board, there's going to be a number of spaces where you don't know if it's going to be harvest or one of three actions on that guide card. Please pay attention. Please do. Because it always throws players for a whack
Mhm.
when there's the one that everybody has to eat half. And then the last one is the decide, will you only harvest or will you only have your animals reproduce? And
Mhm.
that decision is so painful. if if you feel like you've done a split strategy where you've
Mhm.
pushed both, understand where your points are and
Yeah.
push.
Now, my final tip would be, given that the game has so many possible paths to gaining points and to hitting victory, and you will most likely have a stratagem in mind, player order can really affect whether you can efficiently do that strategy. Um, so the typical option is to grab the first player token and to try to regain control.
Hmm.
I do not recommend that. What I instead recommend is to shift gears that moment and target the action spaces you know others want to use. Because when you affect their chain of events and they are suddenly messed up with what they were planning to do next turn, that then opens you up to taking charge in the later turns with what you wanted to do. The guy obviously will need the wood later. You don't really need it. Grab the wood anyway. Because the fact that that wood has accumulated for 5 turns, that person, that other player would have been so happy to get all that wood for his plans. But since you stole it, they're now forced to think of the next 3, 4 turns just trying to get the wood you've taken away from them.
There is that. And then I feel that Toby and I are like often staring at the board like that's a lot of wood.
And there's always that, "Why I was gonna get that?" And
Yeah, we're
it's
normally
there.
rushing to clear the board of these things, and yeah, there's just nothing. Or me, my secret thing is I wish that the player before me tries to get first player. Then I moved up in turn order without doing anything. It's not a strategy at all, but
It's
hey.
a moving up in order without spending the action to do so.
Yes, but I don't get rubies.
So that is Caverna, the Cave Farmers, a highly recommended farming inspired worker placement Euro game that we hope you will find an opportunity to play someday in the future. There is no app for this game yet, unfortunately. I do think there are some online resources that allow it, like Tabletop Simulator, but I'm not really sure because I've never really tried it.
Well, whenever we say full app, like you can play it on your own,
Yeah.
on your own device without
Mhm.
involving other people.
But for those who watched some of our previous episodes, one of the episodes was an episode where we talked about Concordia.
Mm.
And as news has it, a app version is in the works and might
Toby
be
has
released
spammed
very
a lot of
soon.
our friends today with that. There's a Concordia app. There's a Concordia app.
I can't wait.
We just said that we weren't sure there's going to be a Concordia app. There is going to be a Concordia app.
I wonder if other things we'll cover suddenly will start sprouting stuff. We tend to have that synchronicity sometimes in the world.
You gotta hope for the best.
So that was more than 30 minutes, and we had so much fun. We had so much fun talking about this game that we love so much, and we hope you will join us again next time.
Yes. If you have questions or suggestions for future episodes, fill out the Google form at bit.ly Baduy Pride Ideas. And then especially I'm specifically soliciting for like what are long topics that we can do on Friday nights and like have drinks over and chat with. So
Mhm.
things like the digital dating and the guide to gay bar,
Mhm.
LGBT bars in Manila.
And always keep in mind that when you give your suggestions, you are also free to say, and I would love to be a guest in that episode. Because we would love to hear from you as well when we talk about the things that we love.
Yeah, and we're still trying to map out more episodes to bring in
Official guests.
official guests, especially our drag queen friends. So that's
Mhm.
coming up.
It's just that since it is October, we know there are a lot of activities as well out
And
there.
in other words, a lot of paid gigs, and we don't want to interfere with their paid schedules.
Yes.
They need every boost they can get to generate income. Yes, so you can follow us on Twitter, Altobi No Shade, RG Sunico.
And also check out our blog, that's baduypride.com, for all the previous episodes and for stuff about us.
Yeah, feel free to continue the conversation in the comments below and let us know what you thought about Caverna. Do you feel, Toby, don't rub it like it's your precious. Do you want to go farming with some dwarves? Please let us know. And then, of course, be sure to subscribe for notifications, whether on Facebook or YouTube, so you don't miss our next live stream. Once again, I'm Rocky.
And I'm Toby.
And this is Baduy Pride. Good night, folks.
Make babies.
Meh.